These are the legends whispered in the night, stories of mystery, fear, and wonder. Welcome to Island Myths and Legends. The islands remember, do you?
Jabari had always been a storyteller. Not just any storyteller, he was a midnight robber, one of the best. His words were sharp, his tongue quick, his boasts grander than most. Yet, despite his talent, he was just another performer among the hundreds who roamed the streets of Port of Spain during Carnival. But he wanted more. He wanted to be a legend. That's why, when he found himself wandering near an old, abandoned mosque camp on the outskirts of town, he felt a strange pull. The place was forgotten, its wooden walls cracked, its banners tattered and faded by time. The air inside smelled of dust and forgotten stories. And then he saw it. An old, black midnight robber mask, resting atop a rotting wooden trunk. It was unlike any mask he had ever seen. The material looked like cracked leather, yet it shimmered when he stepped closer. The edges were frayed, and the eye holes were deep and hollow, as if they had seen too much. A name rose in his mind unbidden, King Cypher. Jabari's breath hitched. King Cypher was a legend, a midnight robber whose boasts were said to be so powerful that they became real. Some said he had vanished 100 years ago, swallowed by his own words. The mask had to be his. A chill spread over Jabari's skin as he reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the mask, a strange pulse ran through him, like a second heartbeat, strong and steady. He hesitated, a whisper of doubt curling at the edges of his mind. But ambition drowned it out. He lifted the mask and pressed it to his face. A shock jolted through his spine, and 1,000 voices seemed to murmur at once. A cacophony of forgotten boasts, unfinished stories. Then, his own voice, richer, deeper, rose from his throat, speaking words he hadn't meant to say. Ladies and gentlemen, robbers and rogues, hear now the tale of the dread thief of time, a terror unseen, a shadow unknown, whose words shape fate itself. The air around him seemed to shiver. Jabari grinned beneath the mask. This carnival, he would be unstoppable. Juve morning dawned, the streets pulsing with music, paint, and revelry. Jabari stepped into the throng, his cape billowing behind him. The mask clung to his skin, fitting him better than it had the night before. He stood atop a small stage and raised his arms. The crowd turned, drawn to his presence. His first boast poured out like honey, rich and intoxicating. Behold, I am the thief of breath, the shadow at your back. With but a word, I steal the air from your lungs, leaving you grasping. A gasp split the air. A man in the front row clutched his throat, his face contorted in terror. The crowd surged as people rushed to help. Someone shouted for a medic. Jabari's heart pounded, but he forced a grin. Coincidence? Had to be. Yet, as the hours passed, the coincidences kept piling up. I ride the wind, unseen. A sudden gust sent a vendor's stall crashing into the road. No prison can hold me. By midday, news spread that a prisoner had vanished from a locked cell. Every boast he made became real. The mask was not just a relic. It was power. And Jabari? He was now the greatest midnight robber Trinidad had ever seen. Or so he thought. That night, the mask whispered to him. At first, it was faint, like the rustling of dry leaves. Then it became a voice, deep and curling like smoke. Finish the boast, or be swallowed by the tale. Jabari bolted upright, his chest tight. His room was dark, yet the air felt crowded, as if unseen figures pressed close. His breath came quick. Who's there? The whisper returned, stronger. You wear the mask. You speak the boast. You must finish the tale. Jabari clutched his head. His next performance was worse. The words spilled from him unbidden, darker and sharper than before. I am the robber who walks between beats of the heart, the thief of names, the end of tales. The audience held their breath. And then, a woman screamed. Jabari didn't wait to see why. He tore off the mask and ran. But the whisper followed. You cannot run. The story must end. Jabari tried to stop, He avoided the crowds, silenced his tongue. But the story would not be abandoned. It pursued him in shadows, in reflections that didn't move as they should. He boasted of walking unseen. Now figures loomed at the edges of his vision, watching. He boasted of never knowing fear. Now something chased him, just beyond sight. He boasted of never being caught. Now his own reflection lagged behind him, a second too slow. He could not escape the legend. The mask did not just give power, collected unfinished tales. And now it was trying to finish the last one, the one that swallowed King Cypher whole. And it would take Jabari next. Carnival Tuesday, the biggest night of the festival. Jabari stood in the Queen's Park Savannah, facing the largest crowd yet. The mask felt heavier, pressing into his skin like a second skull. He knew now this was how it happened. This was how King Cypher was lost. Finish the boast, the whisper growled. He had one chance. With a deep breath, he raised his voice. I am the robber who steals from the stars, the one who tricks the trickster, who traps the tale. And now, with my final word, the air crackled, the mask tightened, the whisper roared. I robbed the robber himself. A shockwave rippled through the crowd. The mask shrieked as if it were alive. The eye holes darkened, twisting, folding inward, and then fell, lifeless, empty. Jabari stumbled back, gasping. The whispers were gone. The weight lifted. He had done it. He had ended the story. The tale was complete. Jabari walked away, the hush of the crowd behind him. He would never perform as the midnight robber again. But as the night waned, the city whispered once more. In the shadows, the mask sat waiting. And in the distance, a young performer picked it up. A grin spread beneath the mask. The cycle began again.